Okay, so yesterday I actually got the opportunity to do it first thing in the morning, but today I'm going to try and condense the episode because we are headed to Perth tomorrow to then fly out to the Gold Coast for Nail It and Scale It, which is going to be really cool. We booked this back in November. Friends of ours have been part of Ray's program for. We've got a couple mates of ours that have done it and spoken pretty highly of it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm always conscious that we don't know what we don't know. So, yeah, so headed over there, which is going to be really cool. And obviously seeing just for the broader picture, seeing what's happening on the other side of the country. One thing I'm really conscious of is that, actually, I heard a story about a TV show a long time ago. I think it was an interior design show. And the guy that ended up winning it was actually a male model. And the reason he won was because he didn't have a depth of experience in interior design, but he had so much exposure because he was flying around the world, being put up in the best locations, the best hotels. And so he had exposure to the most on-trend design by way of osmosis, and he ended up winning the show. And maybe that's a nice story, but the point stands. And I even remember reading an article by, it was one of the big banks, maybe HSBC or something, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, it was a really big one. And the head of HR said the key thing that she looks for is a depth of experience in one field, and then a really broad cross section in everything. Because it's the cross section part is really the bit that creates the creativity, and the depth is the thing that you need for a depth of skills for it. So you've got something to offer, right? But the breadth is the part that allows you to be able to go, okay, well, I understand this specific skill, industry, discipline in a certain domain, but then to be able to go, oh, well, having worked in that industry, I can understand that. Having worked in that department, I understand that, and kind of offer unique perspective. And this unique perspective and problem solving is really what's really valuable. So the reason I say all that is to say that I know that I don't know what I don't know, and really the only way to bridge that gap, and this kind of goes into what Jordan Peterson talks about. Actually, he's got a really great book called Maps of Meaning. God, where is it? Oh, it's up the top there. Maps of Meaning, really cool. And he talks about like the architecture of life and how we relate to all the different, and how we find meaning in all the different aspects of stories and storytelling. And one of the parts he talks about in that is that when people are asked, how do you relate to the unknown? People always say, well, I don't have a relationship with it, but it's not actually true, because the unknown could be potentially anything, right? And that's impossible to measure. Like what we have exposure to versus what we don't is just it is a rounding error what we have exposure to and what we know. In the grand scheme of even the things that we know that we don't know, And so, stepping into the unknown is a part of that infinitesimally huge expanse of things that we're not exposed to and we don't understand. So it's an impossible task. So the only way to then make the unknown known and have the relationship with it in a healthy way is by doing it. And so this is where I think, courage and that comes into play. This is all just philosophical shit. Like, I'm not saying that, going to Nail and Scale, it's really courageous shit. Like, no, I'm just saying that the reason we're doing it is that there's a lot that we don't know, and I think understanding and getting a breadth of exposure across what cafes are doing on the other side of the country is really, really valuable. Yeah. So anyway, so I headed over for that. So yesterday hit the gym, prick of a night night before, sorry. So Beck bailed because Sterling was just given a grief. So I came home, grabbed Sterling, grabbed the rocker, brought him in here, and he just sat on the rocker and did his thing and chatted and what have you. I'm just going to shut the office door in case Beck comes home. So, so then I took the kids out for Brekky. That was really nice. So I took them out, just jumped in the car, shut up to the bakery. Sterling shat himself, so I chucked him in the passenger seat of the car and changed his DAX and gave the kids $20 and said, go buy yourself something. So they went in there, they came out with cream donuts, and I'm like, the responsible parent in me goes, it's a really shit way to start Brekky. A really shit Brekky to start the day with. And the other side of me was like, fuck it, let them be kids and let them enjoy it. Is that the right approach? Don't know, but you know what? It's fine for yesterday. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm being too critical. Who cares? Who cares? Whatever. It's the over-analysing of myself is what's doing my head in at the moment. But anyway, so it was really cool. We chucked him in. We drove around, listened to some music, put a movie on. By that time, it was like 8 o'clock, and we were actually on our way back when Beck woke up. So she had a massive, massive sleep, which was so needed. Gosh, she's been so knackered recently, eh? Just between gym and all that, which has been cool. So one of the things that's kind of been, actually, you know what? I'll come back to that in a second. I know that the night before, Tilly was just losing it. When I told her, I was like, hey, you need to head to school, she just started crying, and I was like, yo, this is really out of character. And she was saying, I don't like having to do what the teachers tell me to do. I'm like, the teachers are teaching you things that you don't know, and that's the way you learn. So I was like, well, you're always allowed to ask. You're always allowed to say, well, why do we learn this? And I think that's a good question, and we teach our kids to ask why. And I mean, as a side note, I really want to get I think what I've learned is that questions are the steering wheel for conversation. Answers are far, far, far less important than the right questions, hey? Or maybe less useful. No. And the reason I think that is that it's like, okay, well, questions, the purpose of questions is to arrive at an answer. And one's not particularly more important than the other, but they're both equally dependent on each other for it to be useful. There's no point asking a question if the answer you get is useless. Anyway, nonetheless, I think that one of the most powerful skills is to ask questions. And, and so we teach our kids, like he can ask my kids, anyone can ask my kids, hey, what's the most important question? And they're going to say, why? And the other thing we always tell our kids is, we say, who's the boss of you? They say, I'm the boss of me. And we want them to understand that, okay, if you're going to take instruction because you understand why you're taking it, rather than just being obedient for the sake of an arbitrary rule that someone tells you. We speak to our kids like they're adults, not in the sense that we strip them of the freedom of childhood, but we speak to them as though they're going to be able to understand the complex things that we're talking about. And if not, well, then I'm going to slow down and explain to them exactly what is going on, and I think that's really important. And we've certainly enjoyed it. I know the kids have really enjoyed it. So, yeah. So anyway, took the kids to school. And I had a bit of a chat with Tilly's teacher, and I was like, hey, just heads up, this has happened. It's a little... Oh, sorry, that's right. But with Tilly, she was saying that ultimately the issue is not that the teachers are teaching her anything in particular, as much as they're telling her off and sending her to the corner. And I was like, oh, that's really abnormal, really, really odd. And maybe she's seen it in her classmates, and she doesn't want to have that, I guess, public shame. I'm not totally sure, but nonetheless, her teacher was had assured us that if anything does get to that point, there's obviously things they do to stop it from putting kids in timeout, right? But if it does get to that point, then we have to be notified as the parents as well. I was like, okay, sure. But anyway, so it was interesting where that came from. We're just going to keep tabs on that. And I am looking forward to homeschooling the kids, yeah. So, Yeah, so one of the things that I was thinking about yesterday was around like the flexibility and the capacity for uninterrupted focus on the goals we have when we're younger and we don't have children. And it's just like, oh man, I look back and you just don't know what you don't like. You don't know what you don't know, yes, but you don't know what you've got till it's gone. That's what I was trying to say. And and I look at like, man, like okay, we don't have the money to build an office at the shed yet. And by office I mean storage room. It's a storage room. So it's one of those things, hey, where I am. It'd be great to be isolated from the distractions, just to be able to have focus and not have the interruptions. Gosh, like, and I think that the nature of working from home is that it's okay. Like this is an office. Like even yesterday's episode, right? Lexi's pretty good. She's at the age. She's 6 years, right? 6 years old, 6.5. So she's at the age that she's able to understand that actually I'm doing stuff. I prefer not to be interrupted, and she can remember that, right? But Tilly, for instance, like she just gets so excited, and she like dad, bob, 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 and she's already done the damage, and like by way of like the interruption. And I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to be like shush, get out, rah rah. Like so, I'm like okay, stop. Yes, darling. Oh my goodness, wow, that's so beautiful. Rah, rah, rah. Like because I want her to know that I actually give a shit about the things that she cares about too. And I think that it's really important that I don't just like kick her to the side when she's excited to show me things. But does it come at the expense of productivity? 100% it does. And so it's this balance, and I think that ultimately it comes down to priorities. And I was actually talking with a mate today about this. Is that the priority sides of things is going, well, what do I value? I mean, time management is really priority management. That's really what it is. And you use time, so you've got your priorities that you apply your energy to, and time is a measurement of the energy applied to your certain values. Right? So time doesn't track. Okay, I'll dial this. This took me a little while to understand, so I'll dial it right back. Time, you wake up with energy, and you do things with that energy, right? Now, when you get into flow states, you're able to achieve more in a shorter period of time because it is aligned with both your values and your skill set and if you want to go down like the Japanese thing, the ikigai and all that sort of shit, right? So time is a measurement tool. It's a measuring tool for how you apply your energy to your values. That's it, right? So time is arbitrary, but it's a useful tool of measurement for you to be able to identify this is where my time is best spent. And so I don't know where I was going with that. It's gone. But no, anyway, so it's been good. It's been I love being at home with the kids, but it does come at an oh, that's right. Yeah, so one of the things with Beck, for instance, like she's really respectful of the time that I'm in the office, but there are also times where it's like, hey, I have to head out and do this. Can I leave Sterling here? And I'm like, I know that he's going to end up, Beck will be like, oh, I'm just going to be 15 minutes. And it's never 15 minutes. It's always going to be 20, half hour, whatever. Unless it's specifically, I say to her, like, you need to be back in 15 minutes. Absolutely. Then it'll be like, oh, well, while I'm out, and I understand her logic, while I'm out, I'll just do this. I'll just do that. I'll just do that. Because it's a good use of time. Correct. But no doubt what ends up happening, Sterling ends up crying. And then I end up having to stop what I'm doing and deal with him, because obviously I'm not just going to leave my newborn, screaming in the cot. So then I have to bring him in here, and I can only use one hand, and it's just like, Anyway, and it's funny, this mate of ours I was chatting with, he was saying, he's like, hey man, having been there and having done that, the only solution, actually, let me read you the message. I'll omit names. He said, having been in that situation, the only solution is to literally accept that that is the situation now, and stop looking to the horizon and being pissed off for not having the ability to reach it when you want how you want it. What? Okay. I'm not sure. I think it was a typo. I had this big conversation with my partner a while ago when it came to our kids and homeschooling. We made the choice to have children. We made the choice to homeschool. We made the choice to parent how we parent and the cost. My partner being a mum and not a business or career person, and me having to split my time more effectively to be present and loving. Us as a couple having to put our business growth plans, to some extent not fully, on the slow down pill, in some circumstances in the pause pill, because we have to accept that for this season the children are more important, and that just comes at the cost, not just to the ones mentioned above, not just limited to the ones mentioned above. And when I accept that my growth is slowed, when compared to those that don't either care about their kids or are happy to put them in daycare or don't have kids at all, then it's easy to get dismayed and discouraged, or accept and stand by the decision to have children and everything that comes with that. No, for this season, this is how it is. And obviously, then the caveat toward the end of that message is that you don't stop growing, but you certainly let go of the outcome. And dude, I just can't tell you how many times that has been the theme of my life in the last at least year, is just going like, letting go of what I think I should be doing, letting go of what I think the outcome should look like or where I should be. And that's been a whole bloody journey. I'll tell you that a bit about that later. So yeah, so that's good. It's just going like, you know what, I really do, we're going to end up homeschooling our kids. And this is I think the other question is, I look back to the times that the abundance of time that we had as pre-kids, and I certainly didn't have the same sense of urgency that I do now, both by way of children being a really good motivator, by way of having our time restrained, so now I'm more intentional with my time. And the question is like, would I still be as effective with my time had we not had kids? And maybe not, probably not. I'm reading this book, How to Make a Few $1 Billion by Brad Jacobs. I mentioned this already in one of the other episodes, but at 23, he's a billionaire. He made $1 billion company at the age of 23. Or that's when he started, and a few years later, so he was probably 28. And I'm just going like, that's extraordinary, especially back then. Like, we're talking back in the 90s, I think. I'm going, that's wild. That is genuinely wild. And I can't believe that. And, there's these people that just seem to be like so they just have something that I don't. But also like, parents, being a parent and all that, I just think that it's a really, it puts you in check, hey? Yeah. I think it can be a really good motivator for the right person. Probably for not all people, but... Anyway, so yeah, I picked up coffee and dropped coffee back to Beck, and then shot up to see my sister Elle. She does our design. So yeah, we've been working on a family crest, which I think it's really important. What I'm understanding more as a leader, it's really important to have a destination and a vision for where you want to take people. And I think that I understand that on a business sense, but I'm starting to understand it more on a personal sense and understanding it on a family sense. So, start of the year, one of the things that Beck and I did was we were like, okay, like what kind of family do we want to be? How do we want to be able to relate to each other? And how do we want the children to relate to each other and all these sorts of things? And it was really, really good. And then we're like, okay, well, what are the values? And, we've got a few cool exercises around identifying values. Gosh. And so then taking those values and taking the vision and putting it into a crest. And it feels really foreign, a coat of arms and all that, it feels really foreign because I don't know anyone that does it. But when I look at like, your big, your families from like the Middle Ages and everything, I mean, they all had it. And, your royal families, well, they've all got it. And and one of the things when I started reading up about it was that, it's actually it's an anchor in all the chaos and all the things that say you should be this, you should be that, whatever. Is it something that that you're intrinsically identified with, and you understand what those values represent. And it's like a symbol of all the things that you live by. And I'm like, yo, that's really cool. And it's not like right or wrong, it's just foreign to me. But I can see the utility in it. And absolutely, when I think around everything that the world is and all the ambiguity around that and who you should be, is that absolutely for my family, for myself and my children, and for Beck, like, for there to be something that we can all look to and we all resonate with, and we go, yeah, that's what we're about. And it's like the most exclusive club in the whole world, you know. So that feels really cool. So working with Ellen about that, and we found a really cool concept that we're going to run with for our next location. And I don't like the idea of just taking propaganda and just like copying the branding in that. I really want like unique branding for each location, specific to that location. So yeah, so we're working on some new branding, which is going to be in alignment but hilarious, and I'm looking forward to that. So after that I came home and had a meeting with Niro, and here's where it gets good. So I flicked him a message, not last weekend, the weekend before. That's when I was having my big boohoo moment. Fucking where, like, it seems like everyone's got something that I don't, and they're always like, you know, everyone's further ahead and it's got more assets and more savings and, you know, earns more income and, you know, nicer houses and all that sort of shit. And I remember when I was kind of going right in the thick of all that shit, I was talking to Beck, and you know, I came home and I was just like, you know, like it seems like everyone else who's like in, you know, our similar sort of age, like they've all got nicer houses, and I was just like, and I can't even fucking replace the windows, babe. Like our windows are fucked, right? And I was like, we don't even have the money to replace the fucking windows, you know. And that was the thing that really got me, and it broke me a bit. And I was just like, you know, and it's just whole like self-judgment and criticism and all that sort of bullshit, right? And so I messaged, so this guy I've been working with for now 3 years. He's a mindset coach. His name's Niro. Honestly, the best I have ever even heard of in this space. I certainly get tons of value out of him, eh? And so I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, bro, listen, I've just identified, like, I'm in a pretty gnarly shame spiral, but I'm kind of like working out of it. Be good to talk to you about it. And he was, I'll see if I can find the messages because it was pretty funny. He's a legend, eh? Where are you, brother? Oh. Come on. Oh, yeah. He's like, check in with me in a couple of days. If we need, we'll pull up an earlier session. He said, give it a day or two. I don't want to interrupt the process. You'll come to a conclusion. If not, I can help. And I was like, okay, like, and so we just ended up leaving it and kind of like just dealt with it. It was still kind of simmering there, but it wasn't like top of mind, and it wasn't like fucking me completely. So I was like, you know what, I'll just run it. And so today we already had a session booked, and so we got into the thick of it, and I was just like, man, like it's just, you know, I explained the whole situation. I was like, you know, I've got peers who just seem to be like just getting shit right, and shit just works out for them like way better than they do, that like, you know, like progress wise and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, bro, and it's just and it's just like, you know, like we work hard, we take the risks and all that sort of shit, and it's just like we're just not able to make the same traction. And he was like, oh yeah, and I just rambled, and he's like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, man, it sounds to me like that's not shame. I was like, okay, what is it? He's like, it sounds like it's something way worse than shame. I was like, go on then. He's like, it sounds to me like you're like really resentful. And I was like, resentful? The weird part was, it felt right. Is that when he said like, it sounds to me like it's resentment, and I was like, I think you're right. You know, every now and then he'll say something and I'm like, nah, you got that wrong, bro. You know, and sometimes we'll like unpack it and he'll be right, and sometimes we'll unpack it and, you know, there's more perspective and he didn't quite nail it. But this time, man, I was like, yeah, you think you're right on that. And the whole thing, and this is the thing is, I find like oftentimes the frustrations that I have is projection rather than anything else. Like, I mean, either way, it's a trigger, right? But it's either a trigger of something or projection of a lack of. And so the whole thing, and this is like really interesting, and I don't really want to. I don't know if I want to share this on a public platform. There's no reason not to. Yeah. It's just vulnerable. Okay. So, I mean, the whole thing is that it's like, I said to him, man, I was like, man, I look back to like when I was in my early youth, and man, I love the man that I was back then. Like, dude, I just, like, impeccable character. Like, I was so goals driven, and I was dialed in on the things I wanted to do, and I was focused, and I followed through, and whatever I did, I excelled at, and and I loved life, and and as well, it's not lost on me that I was blissfully naive, incredibly. So what ended up happening was, like, I spent a year in New Zealand at a Bible college, and it was one of the best years of my life. Like, I loved it so much, like, so much growth, wicked experiences. Like, it was awesome. And I topped my class there, and kicked some pretty big goals, and and I loved the whole experience. And then came back, and I just had this, like, this, I was just hungry to do something, and I wanted to, like, to sink my teeth into it, and everybody was just like, hey man, just, like, slow down. And I didn't want to slow down. I was hungry to do something, and I had this passion and this, like, youthful zeal, and I just wanted to go. Like, I was hungry to go. And and my folks and a few other people that I look up to, they, like, that's obviously nothing that they can relate to, because it's not them, and it was very much just like, man, just slow down, enjoy life, rah rah. And I was just like, okay, like, I must be doing something wrong. Like, these people are older and they've got more wisdom and experience. Like, all right, I'll just trust them. And I regret doing that. Like, I regret that so much, because I just go, man, I had so much, like, zeal and passion to pursue, and to go, and I wanted to grow, and I wanted to, like, stretch myself and see what I was capable of. And instead I like let that go and gave up on it. And so ultimately, like, the resentment sides of things is that I, and then I went and I did a few other things for people where it was like, I wasn't taken advantage of, but, like, certainly, like, it feels that way a little bit. And I don't think it was from a malicious sense per se, as much as it was just very much like I was probably like a means. No, I listen. When I look back, I was like, I feel like I'm a bit of a. I was treated like a means to an end for the shit that others didn't want to do. And I know that's really vague, and there is more to it, but there's not more that I want to share on a public platform. Yeah, and it was just like, I felt like my time wasn't respected, and especially at a time of life where I was, like, really, really hungry. And it's like, it was almost like I was hungry, but then I was starved, and I was just like, I was yeah. Anyway, so, so the cool part with that. Hang on, I'm just trying to, like, get my train of thought, is how we got to the end there. Hang on, let me just bring up my notes on yesterday. Here's the interesting part, is that, like, out of all of that, I probably lost, like, maybe, like, a year when I was like 15, 16. Like, who cares? And sure, it was like a year of like momentum and traction lost. But man, did I have momentum far out. Like, yeah, I had tons of momentum. And I felt like all of that just got like squashed. Like the best example I can think is it's like you're in like like you're in a car and you're just hooning along and you just hit a really deep puddle and you just go and then now it's a slow crawl. And it's only been the last few years that I feel like I've really got some momentum back properly, you know. Yeah. But anyway, so the whole the resentment thing was really stemmed from this whole like oh gosh, hang on, I was sharing it with a mate today. I'll just read what I said there. Da, 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 da. I said ultimately it was the resentment of not being who I could be because I trusted and listened to advice from people who really didn't know what they were talking about at the time. Once we pulled it apart more, it was really that I was resentful that I didn't have the life experience to be able to discriminate when someone was using me for their own gain or actually had my best intentions at heart, and that my younger self with so much potential really needed guidance, fathering, and someone who cared for my entire well-being. And then this guy that I was chatting with, he said to me, was like, you know, do you forgive yourself for that then? And I said, well, it's not so much that, it's more that I'm capable. It's more that, am I capable of being the one who can provide guidance, fathering, and care for my whole well-being to the boy who didn't have that? And because I mean, like that guy, that young, you know, youthful Billy still lives in me, you know. And emotions are well, I was going to say terrible thing, not terrible thing. I think unresolved can be a terrible thing. The answer to that is yes, and I believe that I am that man now. Is that, you know, if I was to go back to my 15-year-old self, I would provide myself the guidance, the fathering, and I genuinely would care for my overall well-being. And it's funny because that's what I needed back then. And I remember one of the things that Niro said to us right at the start when I started working with him was that, you know, if you look to someone as a perpetrator or you look to someone as the hero, in both cases, you're the victim. And the trick is to learn how to be able to be the hero in your own life. And for those who obviously have like religious connotations there, I would say that there is a way that God fits into that, or a deity fits into that equation without compromising that structure. But yeah, so then the next question is, am I ready to let go of the resentment, because it's the resentment which allows me to be able to put the onus on others for why I'm not where I want to be. And that feels nice, because because letting go of that resentment means I have to take full ownership of it. Sorry, there was a bit of a typo there. And this guy that I'm talking to is like, yeah, that's very interesting. He's on a bit of a similar journey at the moment in his own life. So our session ended yesterday with him asking, he's like, you know, are you actually ready to let go of that resentment? And I said, you know, man, it feels really nice. That's the hard part. And I actually don't want to let go yet. And to his credit, like, he was very much like, okay, man, like, you know, let's sit on that, process it, and we'll pick up on the next session. I was like, yeah, sure. You know, and he's been on my case for the last probably 9 to 10 months about how I've got this value for comfort that's not explicit, but it's certainly there. And it's expressed in the whole thing. It's like, okay, I do all this sort of shit because eventually you want to have the good life and all that, you know. It's not about the growth as much as it is about achieving a point where you're secure and you're safe. And, you know, and when I think around our future goals, like oath, 100%, I want to have like a fuckload of money so I know that I'm not concerned about the shit that can go wrong. Or we want to take our kids on holidays and give them great experiences so that they can mature and have a full life and full perspective. Like, okay, no, that's all right, all good. I thought Beck was trying to talk to me. You know, and so there's, you know, for instance, like, you know, being able to like spend time with my kids and not have to do like all the housework and shit so that we can focus on where our strengths lie. Like, things like that where I'm like, absolutely, I do want to to have the ability and have the comfort to be able to do all that sort of shit too, And so he's been on my case about this shadow value for comfort that I've got, and it's kind of behind the scenes. And I do all these things because I want to be comfortable. And so anyway, the resentment thing expresses itself in alignment with that too, because if I have the ability to be resentful to others for where I'm at, then I can put the blame on them. And if that's the case, then I don't need to take ownership for my situation. And if that's the case, then I can remain comfortable instead of taking action to bridge the gap between where I want to be and where I am now. And that was the whole crux of it all. Yeah. Yes, and I mean that's ultimately where we kind of finished, was the whole thing about like if I don't deal with that resentment, then I maintain the value for comfort, which when I ultimately think about my life, like I don't want that. I don't want to have a really high value for comfort, and this is the thing is it's conflicting, because I really value growth, but I also, by way of my behavior, value comfort. And they conflict, and this is why, there's been times in my life where, I put the boot down, and actually, this is a really interesting thing, is that, and this is what I've seen evident in my life before, is that I do really, really, really well when I'm backed into a corner, right? So what I'll do is that I will pursue comfort to the point of detriment, then that will cause me to be in a position where I am backed in a corner and I have to come out swinging to be able to make it out. But the coming out swinging, then I grow from that. So it's like this dichotomy where I use this comfort thing, which is negatively impacting, to put me in a position where I have to grow. And so it's like this fucked up relationship. And it'd be really nice if that wasn't a thing, So I'm still working through this, but I found that was really interesting. Yeah. And I think the other thing, like I was saying to him a little while ago, is that I don't want to actually... I know that pain's a good motivator. I know that pleasure's a good motivator, and they work together. But I run from pain far, far more than I pursue pleasure. Not in a hedonistic sense, but more in the sense that it's like I work towards something that I want to gain. And yeah, and it's interesting. And I want to be more motivated by who I'm becoming rather than who I'm scared to not become, or I want to be more motivated by the thing that I'm going to achieve, or I'm setting out to achieve, than the fear of what happens if I don't do that, And I'm looking forward to a healthy motivator, whatever that looks like. Yeah, anyway, so yesterday I recorded some of those videos I missed out on. Not gonna lie, stalled a little bit. And then Holly and Levi started their the coffee van not long ago, Osmo Espresso. And they've been doing really good. Very similar story to us in the sense that, they're a month and a half in, and they're already about 4 or 5 months ahead of their targets. And I was like, that's great. And I remember when we had the hole in the wall, very similar. In 3 months, we were starting to hit our 12-month sales targets, and we were like, this is sick. So, yeah, so I'm really stoked for them. So then we came home because it was a bit late there, and the kids have got, Holly and Levi got bunnies, and the kids love bunnies, and Beck loves bunnies, so they had a nice play. And, came home, put the kids in bed, and it was fun. But, yeah, anyway, that was it. It was a big day yesterday. Resentment. It's a bitch.